Greetings, YouTube. A while back I did a video dealing with mind flayers or the illithid. And I mentioned that the concept of a vegetarian mind flayer, one that could eat the brains of animals as opposed to sapient brains. And someone pointed out that a mind flayer can't do that a mind flayer eating nothing but animal brains would be kind of like a human eating nothing but rabbit meat. You would starve to death, and the mind flayer would starve to death, because the rabbit meat doesn't possess what you need, and the non-sapient brain doesn't possess what the mind flayer needs. And the life cycle of the mind flayer is such that they take a sapient humanoid, a human, elf, half-orc, orc. Those are all very popular humanoids to use because of their size. And they plant essentially a tadpole in the ear, which then bores its way through the skull, because there is no actual path between your ear and your brain. And it consumes the brain, and then it makes some physical changes and turns that humanoid into a mind flayer. Interestingly, that process can fail, and the individual can end up looking like their original species, but having an illithid brain and the functioning digestive system. So they still have to consume brains to survive, but they have to crack the skulls open and scoop them out with a spoon. The old classic chilled monkey brain concept, but they prefer theirs more brain tartare. And that's interesting for spies and such. That would be very, very cool to use in a game, I think. However, it got me thinking. Just wiping the illithids out to an individual would be one way of ending their scourge. But what if an organization was more pacifistic? They didn't want to have to murder every single illithid because they want to honor the fact that someone died to create this thing, and they don't want to essentially kill them twice. They don't want to disrespect the body that was used by the mind flayers to create a new member of their species. So, okay, what could you do in that event? So it got me thinking, what if they can come up with a magical transformation that would fuse the mind flayer or illithid with the original form and create a new creature? Now, I don't think there's anything really stopping from using really high-level magic, like, say, polymorph any object, or that would probably pull it off. And so would probably a wish of getting back the original person, or at least converting the person to a new form. That would be very strange for a mind flayer to have somebody turn them into an orc. So they have their mind, but they are now no longer a mind flayer. They just have the mind of one. That would probably drive them insane. That could be interesting as well. But what if you could use some kind of arcane magic, which is lower level than an 8th or 9th level spell? Say something in the 3rd or 4th range. Yeah, 3rd or 4th. But actually, 4th or 5th range is probably where you peg this. 4 in my book would probably work if you had enough, if you wanted to make it complex enough. And the transformation creates a new creature that still has the resemblance, in many ways, of a mind flayer. They still have the facial tentacles, for example, but looks more like the original species, and no longer requires brains. They would still require a higher level of animal protein than the original species, but they could still eat plant matter. For example, they could eat sushi quite without a problem. But they could eat things and enjoy foods that had tastes other than brain. So how would I kind of stack these out? I'm thinking Pathfinder because it's their first thing came to my head. So I'm thinking of like just using elf stats as far as their physical stats. So a +2 intelligence, +2 dex, and a -2 to the con. Seeing, never imagined mind flayers as being all that tough. I imagine them being dexterous and intelligent. We know they're intelligent. So they keep that. Dark vision sticks around. They were aberrations. They're still aberrations. They're just more not aberrations than there were before. They're like half of an aberration again, essentially. But they're still, as far as they still count as both. They would count both as an aberration and as their original species, both of them at the same time. So they could use magic. If they had been a human, they could be able to use magic things or psionic things that were designed for humans as well as for mind flayers, bridging the gap between these two species. I would give them a +2 bonus to 2 skills, kind of hearkening back to the idea that they're remembering some things of who they were before, because this transformation makes an entire new being. They stop being the mind flayer, just like they stopped being the elf or human or what have you when the mind flayers transformed them, and now they stop being a mind flayer and they become this new thing. They become a brand new child, essentially, in an adult size. But yeah, I give them a +2 bonus on that, and I would give them limited telepathy. Give it like a 30-foot range, because they can't talk. They still have mouths and lips and things. They still have a little beak in there that lets them chew and such. Because I would, again, kind of a little more tentacle-like. I mean, a little more cephalopod-like. So they have a mouth, it's just the mouth is more cephalopod-like. So they can't talk, but they're allowed to contact other individuals telepathically as long as that individual has a language. They could give orders to animals, but they can't talk to an animal. They couldn't psychically talk to my cat, but they could yell at the cat, or they could call its name in case your cat is actually trained enough to come when you call its name. None of my cats can do that. But you get the point. But it would be line of effect. You don't need line of sight. So as long as there is nothing between the two individuals that would be considered a magical barrier, they can communicate. So for example, I can have a conversation with my wife if she's in the bathroom. The new creature could not. Open the door, and they could. But they could talk to someone behind them. They can't see them, but there's no barrier between them. So I could talk to my cat if my cat was behind me if I wanted to, trying to dissuade her from doing something naughty, which she's known to do. I hadn't come up with a name for these creatures yet, so I'm kind of floating that one out here. So I don't think I need any other stats for these things. I think that's pretty much balances them out pretty well. Do you think they need one more ability than this? I'm not sure, because I didn't run them through the Pathfinder race guide. I could have, but I didn't. I just kind of riffing here. And I was trying to come up with a name, but I was just drawing a blank because I don't want to use a name that sounds like something the Illithids came up with, because that's not what these creatures are. These creatures are something different. Now, they're still going to be hated and despised by most people in most places, so they're going to want to live in a place that is very accepting and tolerant of different species, and they're also going to have to pretty much prove that they are not cracking people's skulls open and consuming their brains. That's not what they do, which is good, because that's bad. It's one of the reasons that mind flayers pretty much should be wiped out to an individual unless you go through a transformation like I'm mentioning here. So you end up with a new species who would also be, actually I forgot one thing, they would be psionically active. So like the psionic active trait, they would have the wild talent feat from Ultimate Psionics. I think it's called the wild talent. And they would switch that out if it became a psionic class to allowing them to get you can raise your psi point every level if you want to when you stay loyal to your class kind of thing. So I think that's what I would probably want to do here. So you've got a new species that is redeemed in the sense that they are no longer having to eat sapient brains. They have no memory of doing that. They have a vague memory of kind of what they lived through, and maybe some very basic knowledge of that their birth was not consensual. So they're probably not going to be big fans of the Mind Flayer culture. They would still be, probably still be hermaphroditic in some regards, or you could, because, you know, it would probably have to have some kind of, they are true hermaphrodites. That'd be quite fascinating. Because they're going to want to have physical relations in a way that a Mind Flayer wouldn't, because they are now organic, more organic. So they could have desires, they can have sexual urges. So they're going to need something to do that with. I don't know what that is going to be, though. Is it is it one size fits all kind of strange organization down there that lets them do anything they want with it, or is it mutable? You know, they can, if they can undergo a process where it can become more masculine or feminine, or again, one size fits all. That's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought of that until just turning on this video and talking about it. The ultimate in adaptability when it comes to relationships. Of course, you also have to find someone that's willing to have a relationship with an individual that has tentacles for a face. They might also have hair again. Some may, or some may not. But their head's going to be somewhere between a human and a Mind Flayer in shape and size and things, so it's not going to be looking perfectly normal. Their eyes are going to look they're not going to have the eyes of a true human or elf or half-elf or whatever their species was originally. So they're going to look much more like an ordinary person, just one with tentacles. Their skin's going to be the right color. Their hands will be much more regular. Their bodies will be closer to the original. It's just going to definitely be a fusion of these two species together. So let's come up with a name. I think that would be cool if you could help come up with a name, because I really haven't thought about it. I'll have to ponder that for a little bit more. I came up with this idea at work, and I was just kind of, again, and I didn't get into some of the details, for example, about their genitalia, till I just got on this video, or just turned the camera on. So that's fascinating. Often, obviously, it's not an aspect that most gamers touch on, but, you know, characters have sex lives. And the player of this character might want one too. So it'd be kind of interesting to see what that means. You definitely got someone that's falling into the LGBTQ community, I guess. It's going to be a very strange fusion. Wow, that's fascinating. It cuts right across both gender and sexual preferences and orientations and all that together. That's interesting. I guess the word pan would really kind of bridge that gap now, wouldn't it? All right, so let's talk about redeeming Mind Flayers, trying to save them from what they were and make them something else. Obviously not something that's going to happen in every situation. Most people are just going to want to kill them, but some may want to try to get back a loved one, and if they can, at least someone that's less dangerous. They want to honor who they were by preserving the body, if nothing else. So again, let's talk about what you could do with a Mind Flayer. What are you going to do with a drunken Mind Flayer?